All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. This is Geoff from Fluent American checking in once more on a topic that, if you're any bit familiar with like the American English pronunciation or just English space on YouTube, then you've probably seen some videos that we kind of want to get into. And when I say we have a very special guest today. We are going to be joined by Chris Americos. What's up, man?
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just
Excited
telling
to do
Chris.
this.
Chris, you said that you're from Cincinnati.
Yeah, my parents met in Cincinnati, and their parents lived in Cincinnati. My dad's parents were from Illinois originally, but they moved over to Cincinnati,
Okay.
and so yeah, my parents met in high school in
Oh,
Loveland,
wow.
Ohio.
Come on, high school sweethearts. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Um, that's cool because my dad's from Cleveland and my mom's from Scranton, Ohio, coal mining town, and
Oh,
then they met in Philadelphia, and so that's where I was born and raised.
nice.
And again, I was just saying yesterday we had on the stream Maria from English to Excel, and she's also from Cincinnati. So Ohio is out here representing, which is great. Um, but unfortunately, there's some things going on in the space. Are we naming names? Are we naming names?
I mean,
It's already out
I don't
there.
see why not, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's
Okay.
name is out there.
So
I'm
Kevin
Chris.
and
My name's Chris. That's my name. I'll name that one first.
fair. So I'll tell you kind of my experience, and then you can let me know how you kind of got into this whole thing. So I
Yeah.
was like, in the past, I had done some videos where I was looking at celebrities and just kind of analyzing their pronunciation because I was like, sometimes when you're a student, like your teacher tells you things, but you don't always hear it. So it's like, okay, let's look up some models so that way people that everyone's familiar with, but them speaking American English and then kind of identifying some things like maybe like some vowel things like short I versus E sound or like differences like linking and things like that, just to kind of give people a model. And I found that was always kind of a tricky thing because some people have this difficulty separating instruction from critique and like
Mm.
personal attacks. You know what I mean? So I will always try to tread carefully about how do you present the information in a way that's like, hey, like this is for instructional purposes, and things like that.
Yeah.
But then I found these other videos from um, Kevin and Lisa's channel, and I was like, this feels different. Like this just like I don't the intention felt different to me. And so I was trying to like come to grips with like how to handle this situation. So for instance, one of the things I did was I created a new series called like it was like a YouTube short series just like called Accent Masters where we're looking at non-native English speakers and showing some of the things that they're doing well. They may still have noticeable accents, but like they're still doing other aspects of speech that are like super, super natural sounding. But I want to do more to kind of get into this topic. And maybe you can kind of relate to that a bit too. Tell me about like how did you find out about it? What's been your experience? You've been directly involved. Just fun.
Fun is the right word, I think. Um, I really like Kevin and Lisa. Like, I really like them. So like I want to say thank you to them. I want to make sure that I start off by saying thank you to Kevin and Lisa because what they're doing is really good. There's a big audience for people who want to see mistakes corrected. And I think they're good teachers, and it's a pleasure to collaborate with them. Um, and how did I find out about it? Well, let's see. I think some of the people who watch my channel watch their channel. I mean, there's so much
Mhm,
overlap on YouTube, right? So, um, yeah, somebody mentioned it, and they're like, "Oh, what do you think about this?" And
mhm,
so I watched it, and for a long time, I had seen some of those teachers making those mistakes, and I wasn't the one who stepped in and said, "Hey, those are," and called people out, right?
mhm,
So they
mhm,
did that, and that was a risk. And so they took a position, and they in that position really resonates with people who enjoy error correction. You know, there's people who love grammar, there's people who love vocabulary, and they dive into those other videos. And then when they see the videos that are about other things that don't really fit what they're looking for in English, it's not so interesting to them. So there's that
Right.
category of people who are there for the error correction, and they love that. And I think every good English teacher knows that correcting mistakes is a big part of your job. Um, so like the drama that came from that, if we can even call it drama, I don't call it drama. I think of it as engagement. They found a very direct, very, very easy way for them to get high engagement. And so from a marketing point of view, they made a really good move, you know? And so that put them in this
Facts.
position where they now are being spoken about, like right now, like we're talking about them because of that choice that they made. And so I saw this kind of thing developing for a few months. People were kind of asking me about stuff,
Yeah.
uh, and then I saw the opening that they created for me. And so I was like, I've got a long list of YouTubers who I reach out to try to collaborate with and like get something started. Like I'm pretty open to work with most people. And so like I reached out to them months ago, and I don't remember if it was a no or if it was no
Mhm,
answer.
mhm,
But I found my way to collaborate with them. And so that's really how I view it,
mhm.
like the videos have an entertainment aspect and an education aspect. And so there are people who are there for one or the other, and then there's just people who are watching and kind of taking note of what's happening. And what I think is going to happen is I think that this is going to inspire like a lot of other YouTube teachers to kind of go further down this genre of video. Um, I like to me, and what's so great about this is like I've been waiting for this thing to happen for so long, and so I got so excited when they were doing it because I've always wanted to find a way to turn English teaching into battle rap.
You want, like, call outs, name
I
drop?
mean, so like I've always wanted to find how to mix those two things, and then boom, Kevin and Lisa, and I was like, thank you guys.
Let's go, yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't think, I don't think so much of it. I think the only difference between me and maybe the other teachers that they make videos about, well, I guess I made a video about them first before they made one about me. Uh, so like I kind of started it with them.
I wasn't
But
aware. Okay, so you start. Okay, good to
yeah.
know.
And then the other difference is that like while they're sniping different YouTubers, like I'm firing back.
Mhm,
You know what I mean? So this is
mhm,
a
mhm,
so it's a different element now. So now
mhm,
it's really like a battle. And
mhm,
I think that there are people there who are into that. And there are a lot of people who say, I don't want to see that also. You know what I mean? There's a lot of
mhm,
people who say, I don't like this kind of video.
mhm, mhm,
Um so so yeah, that's kind of like a big picture view of kind of how I see it.
mhm, mhm. What kinda pushed you to be like, "I need to make a video and get my kind of foot in the game here"?
Um just I saw it's just human nature that everyone makes mistakes. So I just I just saw the irony of making videos correcting mistakes and making a mistake correcting the mistake. And so like I kind of saw it as like they took the role of police officer of English YouTube, or learning English YouTube, and
Mhm,
um someone has to watch the police. Someone has to hold the police
mhm,
accountable,
mhm,
right? And so uh, that's kind of how I saw the role that I was stepping into at that point. At this point now, it's kind of like I think the point has been made. I mean, I've still got a full clip or whatever you want to call
mhm,
it. I still
mhm,
got a
mhm,
lot of stuff on the way
mhm,
but I also want to kind of pivot this battle concept to something else to try to make it a little more positive. So like I've started making some videos like Chris Americos versus native speakers, Chris Americos versus babies, Chris Americos versus Google, and like find mistakes that those other people make and not have
Mhm.
to focus it just on where it
Mhm.
all started.
Mhm. My son would like a word with you. He's 4.
Yeah,
I like
my daughter is going to be in that video. She's
Oh, that's
three and a
great.
half.
I talked to my son in Italian, but I noticed in English when he's talking to my wife, he has a hard time with th sounds. I mean, kids in the US typically you expect a kid to get stronger with ths right around like maybe 5 or 6 years old, so he's still a little
Mhm.
bit beyond. So that's actually a really good topic. I like that. Um, and I think what you just said really kind of touches on my issue with it, because I think this again, I think it can be done in a way that's productive and helpful, and and people can leave it without having kind of a bad taste in their mouth. Because I think sometimes we see some of these videos and we end up kind of feeling a little bit icky after it. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned negativity, and I do think that, I mean, just look at the comments. I mean, it's polarizing. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, from a marketing standpoint, great. You want separation. You want people to you want people to love you. You want people to hate you. So I mean, marketing, it's a power move. But I think we're also in a space that's geared towards education. So it's just something I think people aren't as used to, because everything in general has been very, very neutral. So maybe just all these reactions are also just from that, like the energy is kind of shifting.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like Bitcoin existed for like how many years before anybody even talked about it, right?
mhm,
So this genre of battle teaching or whatever, like people have been doing it. There's other videos, like people criticizing people and whatever
mhm,
and correcting their mistakes, right? So this is just the popularization of it.
mhm. But so,
Uh, yeah.
but what's changed now? Why are these videos? I mean, now you can find all kinds of like people posting their own. I was watching another one last night of just people. People are responding now, unlike in the past. So
Mhm.
what's the nerve that's kind of been struck? Do you think?
Everyone likes to feel like they're right, you know? So uh you're only going to behave in a way that's consistent with how you view yourself. And therefore, you're only going to take actions that you believe are correct. And it's very hard for people to accept criticism or mistakes, you know?
Yeah.
And so um, people enjoy watching that. I think it's human nature. I think it's human nature. I think uh, that this adds an element of competition. And I think
Mhm,
that competition, I've heard some people have said that the competition in this space isn't good. It should be all about education or something like this. I think competition pushes us to be better.
mhm,
I think that it's pushing me to be better. I think it's pushing the whole industry to be better. Like, for example, some of the videos that they made, like back towards me, like I watched them and like some of them, sure, I'll disagree with. Like, oh well,
mhm,
that wasn't like that,
mhm.
uh but some of them were just like blatant. Like my whole life I've been mispronouncing the word Armenian. I've been saying Armenian. and like and like so I'm making it, so how ironic is it that I'm making a video correcting like someone else pronouncing a country adjective,
Mhm,
and here I
mhm,
am mispronouncing. So like that was
mhm,
like they got me on that, and that was like I saw that, and like I'm not disappointed. I'm like, oh, like good hit, like good punch. You know what I mean? Like you're in the boxing ring, like training with someone, and they like smacked you real good, and you're like, ooh, that was good.
I see
Okay,
what you did there. Yeah.
yeah. So like that's kind of how I feel about it. Like I'm getting stronger, and there are things that I never even like. You analyze your speech only to a certain extent, even as a teacher, right?
Mhm,
More so as a teacher than a regular speaker of the language, but um like it's great to have now someone who's just gonna like without any mercy is gonna point all those things out, just to have
mhm,
all the weaknesses shown out there, and for those to just be on display. Like you have to, I feel like some people might not be able to handle that, you know?
mhm,
So I'm
mhm,
very comfortable in that environment, like show everybody the weaknesses. I get to improve. Everybody gets to watch
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
feel like that's only a success story.
Mhm.
So, um, so yeah, so that's kind of my take on that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
wanted to also mention about talking about kind of this genre of battle teaching, if we can call it that. I'd
Mhm.
like to kind of think of it in that way because that's really how I came to participate in this. Um, there's also another guy, like there's this Russian guy. His name is Kirill, and his channel is Baradati Linguist. It's in Russian, but
Okay.
the bearded linguist.
Okay.
Um, and he has been making videos for, I don't know, a year or more. Like he'll find a Russian teacher of English that's selling a course online. He'll go into their course
I know
and
what you're
make
talking about.
videos like criticizing the course and like showing
Mhm.
how it's not useful and stuff like
Mhm.
this. And
Mhm.
so like he was talking about
Mhm.
Marina before Kevin and Lisa.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so like there's people out there who are doing similar things to this, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and they are getting a lot of engagement by doing it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think another bone to pick that a lot of the that a lot of the big YouTubers with big channels have that that they that makes them have these negative feelings towards what Kevin and Lisa are doing is the fact that their entire business is probably built on YouTube. You know, some of those YouTubers out
Mm.
there, their entire business is built on
Mhm.
YouTube, and whatever they're making is YouTube, and they're making a living off of YouTube. It's a core feature of their business. And so they think that when students see what Kevin and Lisa are doing, that it's going to destroy trust. There's not going to be enough trust for them to buy
Mhm.
their course, buy their
Mhm.
product.
Mhm.
So that's going to hurt the bottom line.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm luckily in a very different situation, which allows me to be more flexible. So
Mhm.
YouTube is a really, really small piece of what we do. And
Mhm.
if my account got blocked tomorrow, it would suck. But
Mhm.
it wouldn't like make a dent in the revenue.
Mhm.
So um like that's actually what I help online business owners do. We bring in our growth team. We focus on key growth areas, opportunities that can produce a big ROI in 90 days. And then we charge between $30,000 and $50,000 for 90 days of our work.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
like, even though I'm a marketer, I really enjoy teaching
Mhm.
because that's where I got my start. And
Mhm.
I'm really competitive. And so this is, like you said at the beginning, it's a lot of fun.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you think how much do you think that's true that these sorts of videos will erode trust in the people? Because I have kind of conflicting views on that.
Um, I think that it puts their name out to an audience also. And
Mhm.
like the people who are really hyper sensitive about little mistakes or something and like they're real big fans of what's happening, then they might actually go and watch that person's videos more and try to find the
Mhm.
mistakes. And by
Mhm.
trying to find the mistakes, you're watching the videos and there are ads popping up and there's
Mhm.
so like you're sending traffic to every person that you're making the videos with. That's why I can't like I if I really didn't like Kevin and Lisa, that's why I said at the beginning I like them a lot. Like
Mhm.
if I didn't like them, then I wouldn't use my platform to
Promote
to
them. Yeah.
put them up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's like all of the people who they criticize, that's what they're doing for them too.
Mhm.
And you just have to find a way to work there. So I feel like I found my position in this whatever
Mhm.
you want to call it.
Mhm.
And so yeah,
Mhm.
that's kind of where I'm at.
Mhm. Mhm. I
Yeah.
think some of the things too that happen, like for instance with Marina, I mean, they're pointing out people's mistakes, and like I think there is that concern. I mean, you see it in the comments that people are like, "Oh, you're just attacking like their business and things like that." But I think people are also kind of missing out on how like making businesses works. Like you don't have to be 100% perfect or expert. You just need to be ahead of your student. That's all you need. Like you can be
Yeah.
one step ahead, and that's all. Like I
Yeah. There's
don't.
no perfect teacher.
Yeah, and I think that like I don't. People are like, "Oh, I'll never take I've just reading the comments, like people are like, "Oh, I'm never gonna watch like another Marina video again." And it's like I don't like. Well, why does it hurt you? Like I don't. I'm so confused by that. Also by the fact that Marina's program is like, hey, like, or people are. I don't know what her like her mission specifically is, but people are saying that, oh, like her mission is like speak English like Marina, and people are like, no, she makes mistakes, but like she speaks really good. She speaks
Yeah,
really well. Like if most students like are speaking like her and making those mistakes, then you're in pretty good shape.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. She's a very successful person. She's done a lot of really cool things, and whatever steps she had to take to get there, whatever,
Yeah.
she's there now.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's like it would be great to see her collaborate a little bit more. I think it would really
Mm,
help her marketing if she collaborated more with people who can touch on wider aspects.
mm,
There's also something that might be interesting for us to discuss today, which is this overall influence of Russian teachers on the teaching English as a foreign language market, because you see a lot of them, and there's like if you go to the top
mm, mhm,
50, like top 50
mhm,
teaching English channels on YouTube, like there's a big percentage
mhm,
that's
mhm,
Russian.
mhm.
And you
There's observation.
population wise, you wouldn't think of that. Like the top one, I think, is Hindi. The next one is
Mhm,
like Arabic, and then you've got people like Lucy, and then
mhm,
uh, so like, but there's a lot of them there,
mhm, mhm,
and the audience of Russian learners of English, they are big users of YouTube, uh,
mhm,
and they like to see, like when you're as a student, you want to be able to understand your teacher, right?
mhm,
So they want to hear someone who speaks close to how they speak, and because it's clearer to them.
mhm. Right. Right.
And so you've got this huge audience of people who are really engaged. And when like having lived and taught in Russia, have had an English school in Russia, I can say that they're really like grammar and rule focused. I think Chinese students and Russian students, these are two very specific groups of students who are really focused on grammar and rules. And that's why like the ideal teacher to them epitomizes these rules, and can explain all of them, and always has like an easy explanation, and is able to say why something is a certain way, and doesn't just say, well, that's just the way native speakers speak, like
Mhm,
that's the rookie teacher going in, and the expert comes in and says, oh, there's this rule, there's this reason, there's this thing. And
mhm,
so and if you look at Kevin and Lisa's videos, they get a lot of engagement by Russian speakers. And then Lisa also is a Russian speaker,
mhm,
has a channel teaching Russian,
mhm,
and I have one too. And I'm a non-native teaching
mhm,
Russian as a foreign language.
mhm,
And so like I have to deal with the same stuff that Marina has to deal with in
mhm.
teaching English. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Um, so I get that over there. And,
Mhm,
and so like I can see it from their side too. It's like it sucks to have someone correcting your mistakes, but like if I make a video and teaching something in Russian that's not correct, like people will make fun of my pronunciation on those videos all day.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yep.
And so like that's fine. That's fine.
Mhm,
My audience is people who are at a lower level, who like that kind of mistake isn't even on their radar yet because they don't even
right.
know the alphabet.
Mhm, mhm,
So choose your audience who you're going to be speaking to. That's important.
mhm, mhm. Have Kevin and Lisa ever actually directly like reached out to you?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think it's the other thing too, from like just from a YouTube viewer's perspective. When I first saw these videos, I would see like either Kevin or Lisa, and then I would see like Marina's face on the
Yeah.
thumbnail, or like I would see Kevin or Lisa, and then I would see like Veronica's face. So then, like from an outside perspective, before I even click on the video, I'm like, oh, cool, collaboration, nice. And then you click it, and you're like, I don't know if this is actually a collaboration or not. Like this doesn't feel, it feels kind of one sided. Like I think I think that's another thing that's led to some of the uh, kind of negative feelings about the videos is that they feel kind of misleading, and I think there's also questions about intention. Like I think that some people are viewing this as, oh, you're not even one. This is not collaborative. You're just picking and choosing examples without context. You know. But two, yeah, it's instructional, but it seems like almost instruction is the secondary goal. The primary goal is views. I think
Mhm.
if you, for instance, you look at Kevin and Lisa's channel, and I get, from a business perspective, hey, you do you. But I think that's always in an education space. I think that can be a tough kind of pill to swallow because it leads to a sense of mistrust. Because like, are you actually here to help me? Or are you just trying to get as many people, get as many eyeballs on this as you can? And then not helping matters is you look at like the hashtags of the videos and what's like the first hashtag, viral video, hashtag viral, hashtag like all this stuff, or even like hashtagging the person's name of the channel. So it's like you're using the other person's content for your own leverage.
Exactly.
And I think those are the aspects that for me just I appreciate what's happening. I totally get from a business perspective, I get that. And
Yeah, we
I,
gotta separate the education
you
and the
know,
business, right? We have
yeah.
to separate those 2 things because there's that line that has
hmm
to be drawn between them, and I think that's the main point here,
hmm
right?
Right. But I think that being on a public space like YouTube, when you're doing things like that, it's I mean, it's polarizing. Obviously, I mean, the response to the fact we're doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think? How do I phrase this? Like, if you're approaching this sort of content, I mean, you've gotten into a little bit with them too, but like, if you were going to kind of start doing this on a mass level, targeting like non-native teachers,
Mhm.
what would be your strategy for going about it?
Huh, good question. Yeah, I like what you said about how the fact that they put the person's face on the cover, like, that really attracted people to say, "Oh, they collaborated, and it looks like a collaboration." And, it doesn't feel like a collaboration, but it looks like one, right?
Right. Right.
So if I were going out like, that wasn't like, I didn't take that step, right?
hmm
I'm not gonna lie to you, I had that idea. Watching
hmm
Marina's
hmm
videos, I had that
hmm
idea.
hmm
Um, but but I didn't take the step of actually doing it,
hmm
right? Uh,
hmm
and so, like,
What can we
is
talk
that
more about?
right or wrong? Is that right or wrong? Like,
I
what
don't.
would yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna. So you thought about it, and then you decided not. What was your thinking? Deciding like ultimately be like, no, we're just gonna go ahead.
Uh, yeah, I just like, I didn't think that that was gonna be interesting.
Okay, fair. No, that's fair.
I
That's
just didn't
okay.
think
That's okay.
first of all, I didn't think it was gonna be interesting. Second of all, I just didn't feel like talking about those people and, like,
hmm
because yeah, there are people who maybe don't know those people, even though they have a
hmm
very big channel, whatever. Like, yeah,
hmm
I just for whatever reason didn't get
hmm
into it that deep. But it
hmm
was kind of like there's these mistakes and like there's a lot of people watching them. And so like all of the reasons
Yeah.
that led them to make that decision, like I saw those two, thought about that. But at the end of the day, I think Marina has a lot more to offer as a collaborator than as a competitor. And I don't see her like she doesn't overlap with what I do. Even though we're right in the same space and a lot of the same people watch, we have really complementary offerings as far as
hmm
the English market goes. So like I don't,
hmm
you know what I mean? Like I didn't need to burn that bridge for absolutely no reason or just for a couple of
hmm
views.
hmm I think that's interesting what you said too about there's you have a lot of the same viewers, and I think that's a lot of there's some channels out there. I mean, just from doing collabs, I've got a decent number of channels. Like, there's some people that they'll never get back to, or they're like, no, like this is my stuff, and it's like I think there's some people just have this view that it's competition, And like yeah, I mean, there's a competitive aspect to it, but there's also space for everybody. You know,
Absolutely.
like you said, you have you have some of the same viewers. You know, like that's, and people here. You know, I tell people I'm doing this stream with you or like other people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I love Chris's channel," like stuff like that. You know, like it's
Yeah,
there is room for everyone.
absolutely.
Like,
There's room for everyone. We have the same viewers, we have the same customers, we have the same the same collaborators. Everybody's working in this space, and then the bigger you get, the smaller it gets.
yeah,
So
hmm
you start knowing the same marketing people and the same, you know, advertisers and the same
hmm
and then you start working with the same people and then people from over there start to come to you. Like I can't tell you how many times someone's come to me, "Oh, I want to come work with you. I worked with Marina."
hmm hmm
Okay. Or like a girl who went to school with my wife, like went and worked with Marina for a
oh
few
yeah,
months or
yeah,
something. Like
hmm
so, and it's not just Marina. It's there's a lot of
right,
big good channels out there. You know.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I know a couple people have brought in questions that not entirely related to our discussion, so I'll bring those in
Fine.
at the end if you I want to address them. But any kind of like last thoughts on the situation or where you see this going and moving forward? I know you kind of hinted at that earlier, but
Yeah, I think moving forward, I mean, I don't think that Kevin and Lisa are going to stop making the videos that they're making with other people's faces on them, and
they're the, they're the
that's
highest view getter. I mean, it's
right.
so like you look at their channel. I mean, they'll do a normal video and like it does fine, but then you see the video they put on Marina's face and it's like their highest, especially
Yeah,
like over like for time. You know, like
and they have a lot of engagement, and I like their strategy of like, let's make a new 3-minute video and then toss like 20 minutes of old stuff behind it.
hmm
Um, that's always fun too.
hmm hmm
But no, I mean, I think they should keep going. They like they've solidified their position, and it's going to be hard for them to get out of that position later if they want to. But yeah, like I think that personally, I'm going to try to go more in the direction of, I mean, I've got plenty of stuff for them, and like every new video they make, it's like 1 out of 2 videos I can find something because nobody's perfect, and you can, and if you're gonna nitpick on everything, then you can always find
yeah,
something, right?
yeah,
So, but yeah, so the future of this, I think there will be more people who step into these roles, and I would be so happy to see someone do to me what I did to them. Like I would love for someone else to come up and be like, "Boom, Chris, hit
mm,
you from sucker punch,"
yeah, hmm
and then like the competition. It's just
yeah,
it's fun, and I would love to see people competing at a high level. It does, and like I hope like all the negative aspects of it can be removed. Um, I do feel like part of that is a show. Part of
hmm
that is like right now, you got the real guy here talking to you. I'm saying I like them.
hmm
I'm gonna go make a video tomorrow or whatever, and the video is gonna say, "Don't like be careful of these
yeah.
teachers." Like,
People
you
are
know what
gonna
I
cut
mean?
this stream right there and just use that part, you know? Like it's like, yeah, that's
But like it's a show. Uh I don't it's not that I don't like them or something.
mhm,
It's that this is the genre that they're in, and I'm in it too.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. No, I'm open to whatever other questions people wanted to ask too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And guys, again, like if you have questions related to this topic or English or life, sometimes we get relationship questions and things too. I mean, if you need help, we can try. um, First one here from Shook: How to handle the speed of speech according to regional accents. That's actually a
Mhm.
very interesting question.
So I guess by handle, he means like understand,
Yeah,
right?
she. hmm
She. Mhm.
hmm
And then according to regional accents. So, the accent question and speaking like a native speaker and all of this stuff, right? The first thing that I always have to say to anyone who approaches it like this is that like you only need to be able to blend in with people who like in one area, right? So at
hmm
any given time, you're going to be in one geographic location where there's one, two, three accents. So there's going to be like a main accent for the place that you're at. And if you're just visiting a place, well, you don't need to learn a whole new accent or change how you talk. If you're going to go live there, okay, now you're learning it for a different reason. You're trying to, adapt more. So you only need to focus on that accent. Like pick one accent. For example, I'm learning Spanish. I picked the Argentinian accent. It's different from Mexican and from Spain and it's different from other places. And so I chose that because I went there and I want to go back. And so I want to blend in more when I'm there. So if you want to understand the speed, first choose the accent that you want to study. You can't apply the same logic or whatever to all accents because there's going to be different things that are like, I don't know where you started learning English. Maybe you started learning British English. So for you to learn a Cockney accent, I don't suggest learning that, or like I don't think that that's something you should try to do. But if you were to try to do that, then it would be easier for you to do that than to learn the accent of someone from Texas, for example, because it's closer. The underlying structure is closer to what you've already learned learning British English. So it's not an easy answer. So the short answer is find the accent that you want, study that accent, and practice more with people who have that accent. Like try to speak with people more who have that accent, listen to more videos of that accent, whatever. Focus in on that accent. That's what I would say.
I think you brought up some interesting points. For instance, you brought up the Cockney accent. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people who learn languages aren't necessarily think about when they start. But there are, I'll just use stereotypes for lack of a word right now. Stereotypes that come around with different accents.
Yeah.
For instance, to give you an example, I was academic director at a language center. I hired a teacher who was Chinese, who, she still has like some elements of like Mandarin in her speech, but overall spoke really well, but had the hugest Valley Girl accent. It was like the hugest in Ohio, and it's like, out of all the accents to pick, that's the one, huh? That's the one that, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do think that sometimes when we're picking accents, we're not aware of kind of all of the cultural associations that come with that specific accent.
Yeah.
So like, if you choose a Southern accent, there's a, I forget if it's like a documentary or something about like this, again, a Chinese immigrant who really loves Southern accents. So he went to Texas, like became a cowboy and like just fully embraced that accent, which is cool, but if you're planning on like, working on like Wall Street or something like that, and you've studied a Southern accent, not say you can't make it, but there's going to be I think a slight disconnect at first until people get to know you better. So I think when you're
Yeah,
choosing an
learning the
accent,
standard is
yeah.
probably strategically better to
Mm-hmm.
stick to the standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's also something that just in terms of the encounters, like the more regional stuff, a lot of times doesn't get the mass market attention. So for instance, if you're watching things like if you're watching just, the American media machine, most of the content you're hearing out there, unless it's like a show that's super intentional about, going into a specific region, they're usually using a Midwestern accent.
Yeah.
Just a note. In a Midwestern accent, the U.S. something to consider too is that people are so mobile. I'm from Philadelphia, living in Ohio. Chris is from Cincinnati, living in Tampa, Florida. Like people move around. So a lot of the regional things that were super prevalent, especially like 30, 40, 50 years ago, accents are really shifting currently in the US. And they're going to shift more because over time, the vowels do change. But
Absolutely.
just
Yeah, I just had
I don't
a
know.
interview on my podcast with a guy who has a whole channel about African American vernacular English.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had like an hour-long conversation. I'm going to put it on my channel about, just the differences here and that
Mm-hmm.
it's actually recognized as a dialect.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different grammar
Mm-hmm.
and there's different rules.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so like a lot of people will view that as speaking incorrectly, but there's a rhyme and reason, and it's not the standard but it is
Yeah.
correct for that group of
Mhm.
people who speak this.
Yeah.
And I even told him about uh, this guy I know in Russia. He learned English completely by listening to Eminem songs. That's the only like I'm
I
1000%
believe
serious. I
it.
met him and he starts talking to me. And like first we're in like a group of Russian people where he's speaking Russian or whatever. And so like, and then he's like, "Oh, you speak English?" Yeah. And then he starts talking. And I'm like, "When did you live in the Bronx?" And he's like, "No, no, I've lived here all my life." What? Like, how do you talk like
Mhm.
this?
Mhm.
And I was just shocked. And
Yeah.
and so that's
Yeah.
another just an example, right? Like me as an American person meeting people in Russia, I met him and I immediately had this association because of the accent that he chose to learn. And so a lot of that has to do with maybe interests too.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. If you guys have other questions about that, be sure to let us know. But I think that's a pretty thorough answer. That's actually an interesting. Like for instance, for me, when I was choosing between because I went to the Università per Stranieri in Italy to study Italian, and like there's a main one in like Perugia, which is like in the middle of the country, and then there's another one down south, and I chose the one in the middle. Um, and just from a pronunciation standpoint, probably a I hate to use the word safer, but I mean it kind of is a safer choice. It's a more kind of universal approach, because in Italy, Southern Italian is very different than I mean, just like in a lot of countries, just they speak different in the South. It's different.
Absolutely. I don't
I
know
know
if I
Chinese
told
here,
you
yeah.
before, but I went to high school for 2 years in Sicily.
Oh wow, I mean that's not even Italian. That's a whole different.
Right.
That's like a whole other thing. Yeah.
And right, and so it can be completely different. Like in Italy, each region is completely
Oh yeah,
different.
no one speaks
And
Italian. No one.
like in standard Italian, what is it? Like te amo, ti amo, ti amo is I
Mhm.
love you, but in Sicilian it was ubedu.
That's yeah,
So something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, and that's how they are. Yeah. Yeah, no one actually speaks Italian, which they don't tell you about till you actually arrive there, and then
Right.
it's like,
It's
all right.
after you've been studying Italian for 2
Yeah,
years,
it's like okay.
then you go out and you go to the shop and you don't understand what they're saying, and then they have to switch to Italian to speak to you.
Yeah, yeah. Although I mean, it's oh, we could do a whole other episode just on language extinction and things like that. It's a whole other thing. But
Yeah, I see another question
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Someone speaks British English about 40 years and wants to speak American English fluently. Ooh.
I mean, with British English, so okay, why do you want let's get into the motivation, right? Like why do
Mhm.
you want to learn American English and speak American English fluently if you've already spoken British English for 40 years? Because like it's just going to probably sound weird unless you're trying to be an actor and like you need to have this accent to perform. uh then you need a specific accent coach for that. But
Mhm.
like, yeah, if you already have been speaking British English for 40 years, you don't need to speak fluent American English. You speak fluent English already, and American people will understand you. Like, again, with back to the Russian connection, like Russian guy, he worked in which company was it? Not KPMG, another one. Anyways, one of those big accounting firms, and he moved to London, worked there for like 5 years, moved to the States. Now he works here in Florida. He speaks with a British accent. He's like 98% fluent, little mistakes every now and then, but when he speaks, he sounds like a British person. So American people who are listening to him, they don't automatically say, "Oh, you sound like you're Russian." They don't say, "Oh, you sound like you're foreign." They just think, "Oh, this is a British guy." And like if he says something weird, no, it's just because he's British, you
Mhm.
know? The same thing with like students who have a really high level of English. They come to the States and they speak to someone, and then there's little elements of accent or little like phrases that people, choice of words that people would say differently. And people look at them and they say, "Are you from Canada?" Right?
Mhm.
Because they think well, this person speaks fluently, but there's just something that's a little different. So probably it's Canada.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I've been in that situation a ton of times when American people just say there's some small accent, so it's probably Canada.
That's like I was at a workshop once, not English related, and one of the facilitators there to us had a very noticeable British accent, but he's like, "Nah, I'm from Jersey. I grew up in Jersey." But he had spent a couple of years in high school in the UK and picked up a slight London accent. So now he's kind of in this weird spot where, I mean, dude's like 40, 50 years old, and like to Americans he sounds British, but then the British people he sounds American still. So it's kind of like it's like no one knows where he's from.
Right? And
Um,
so that's
yeah.
awesome that you brought up that example because do you consider him a native speaker?
Well, that's so I would counter that with, is there a such thing as a native speaker?
Right, right.
It's like, you know, like I mean, I think because I think you know we're humans. You know, we need archetypes. We need like things that fit our paradigm, and so we come up with the concept of a native speaker to be like, okay, so this is something. You know, we put all these attributes to them, and then we try to fit it. When in reality, the way that I speak English is different than the way you speak English, which is different than the way my mom speaks English, which is like it's just such a
Yeah.
it's it's I understand the need for creating the model, but we also have to understand that it is a model,
It has to be
you know.
flexible.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Um
And a lot of that has to do with your identity. So like
mhm, mhm,
that's something that that's why a lot of these questions that come up, my first reaction is what's the motivation? Why are we doing this? And to address that before answering the question
mhm,
itself, right?
mhm,
Because the question might not even it might assume something that's not
mhm,
completely accurate.
yeah,
And so like who do you believe that you are? That influences how you speak.
mhm,
And so your friend, he went to the UK. In order for him to take on a piece of this UK accent or whatever accent he was around at that time, he needed to open up a piece of himself and
mhm,
say, I have the like what I did before can be changed, right?
mhm,
To not be to have an identity that's so closed
mhm,
and so rigid. And
mhm,
so, like, that is my story 1000%. Like, I was born in Germany. So, like, people hear that, and then students will be like, oh, you're German. I don't speak German, never had a German passport,
mhm,
never anything.
mhm.
My dad was in the military.
Yeah, I was about to say army. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was born there, lived there till I was like 1 year old. So don't even remember anything. Came back to the States,
Yeah.
Cincinnati for like 9 years, then Hawaii. So again, I go to Hawaii, people talk differently. And I take on some of that.
Yeah.
And I start to
Yeah.
have these aspects of people talking in Hawaii. Then I move to Italy. So what happens? I start to learn Italian. I start to try to speak Italian and hang around
Mhm,
Italian guys. And
mhm,
what happens? I move to Rhode Island. What happens in Rhode Island? I start to not pronounce R at the end of the word, and I start to you know what I mean. So like every place that I've moved, I've taken a little piece of that with me because that's part of my identity. And when I was there, I had to try to blend in. And as a, when you're not an adult, that's not really a conscious thing that you're doing.
mhm,
And so, so that's kind of how I got to where I am now, where it was just like I have to take in all this stuff. And like if you want to learn another language, I feel like that's really key too.
mhm,
There has to be a place in your identity where
mhm,
you find the English speaker within you,
mhm,
right? That's what I had to do for Russian. I remember my first month there, I was in a teacher training with this girl from Minnesota. We're on a bus, and I was talking about you have to allow yourself to become a little bit Russian so that you can like feel the language and like
mhm,
like understand the context and try to get into it. And she was like, I don't want to like I don't need to change who I am to learn Russian. That's what she said.
mhm.
And I that stuck with me for a long time because I was like, I think you do need to change who you are
Mhm.
to learn Russian.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
That's such a
long-winded answer, but
no, it's good because I think we also get attached to this idea that we have one self. It's just this is it. I am this 100% of the time. When in reality, that is so like we are all
constantly
You are
growing,
multiples. The way you are in the morning, the way you are watching this right now is going to be very different than how you are 12 hours from now.
right? And that can
Or
affect how you speak.
yeah, 100%. So it's like that idea of trying to be a constant and wanting to be a constant is I understand that it feels safe and like you get that kind of sense of control, and some people need that especially, but I think you're missing out on the reality, and I
Yeah.
think it's a tricky thing.
People focus on being something instead of becoming
Mhm.
something.
Yeah, yeah, they have the idea that I do this. This is me. I always do this. This is how I am.
Right.
You know.
And then we apply that to language because it's so
Mhm.
much easier to learn a rule. This rule applies all the time. I follow the rule.
Mhm.
And that's how in Spanish I started saying el mano instead of la mano
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it doesn't end with an A.
Mhm.
So there should be a rule and blah, blah, blah.
Right,
Nope.
right, right, right. I see a couple other questions. Powderhead, I'll get to your question in a moment. But I do want to. Jay's trying to. It's not really a question, more a comment. This
Oh,
goes
Jay
back.
Lee. So Jay
Mhm.
Lee is an active commenter on Kevin and Lisa, on mine.
Mhm. Jay Lee
And
is
I'm
everywhere, and
glad to
like it's
see
several.
him.
I see Jay Lee everywhere. Um,
Yeah, so
it's just
Jay Lee, like,
doing
keep
the thing.
going.
Yeah,
Yeah,
doing the
like,
work.
I really love it. The engagement is awesome.
Um, so this also kind of gets back to because I've had conversation with Jay Lee two kinds of like it's because at first I feel like, and Jay, feel free to correct me, but Jay was kind of defending like what Kevin and Lisa were doing. Like, no, like they need to call these people out. These people aren't making these people have product. They need to be called out, And then some of the thoughts have kind of shifted since then. But I what are your thoughts on this? So in theory, if we'll use Marina as an example, if Marina is putting out videos that don't contain any mistakes, then there's nothing to correct. And so by default, it's Marina has responsibility for the content she's putting out for these mistakes. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, Jay, thanks a lot for that question. Basically saying that teachers should correct their mistakes, right? Like they should review their content thoroughly before releasing it to avoid any possible mistakes. Um, that I 1000% agree with you, Jay. I think I've used that phrase 3 times. I can't say that anymore. I completely agree with you, Jay. Um, However, people aren't perfect. So even if you review it, there can still be a mistake because there can be things that you just didn't know or you didn't think that you needed to review, right? Like the example earlier I gave was like in one of my videos, I pronounced the word Armenian, Armenian. And that was a mistake that I truly didn't even know. And so it was great that people in the comments said, hey, you pronounced that one wrong. And then they went and made a video about it. So like that was really cool because in like I just speak English all day, every day. You know what I mean? I've been doing this forever, and I never thought that I was pronouncing it wrong. My whole life. Just imagine your whole life you're saying this word. I mean, I don't say it that often, but
That's
but
fair.
but like you know what I mean. So like I didn't know that I needed to change that because I just didn't know until somebody told me. And so in that way, it's really cool that they're telling people. And so that's what I'm doing for them too. We're helping each other in that way. But yeah, coming back to Marina. So Marina has a big team of people, right? Like I have a team of people who's doing my stuff. It's not me back there clicking all the buttons and stuff. Like I'm gonna put my face on the video. I'm not even putting my face on videos anymore. I'm having the other teachers in our team making videos. So like now my face is just here for the fun, for the competition, basically. I'm not even supposed to be making videos right now. So like, but in Marina's case, like, yeah, she's got a team of people working with a team. You might have multiple people doing different pieces. And sure, in Marina's case, maybe she could benefit from having a native speaker or someone who she trusts reviewing some things. Like in our process, we have at least 3 levels of checks before it goes out. And like people still miss stuff. You know what I mean? So no one's ever going to be perfect. Avoiding any possible mistakes Jay, you said before they release it, they should avoid possible mistakes. Absolutely. Everyone should avoid mistakes. 100% of the time, will they not make a mistake? No. Everybody will make a mistake. I will. They will. Marina will. Everyone will.
Yeah, I think
It's like the police officer following the car, right? If a police officer follows the car long enough, they're going to find something that they did wrong.
or in the case of my wife, like she was at a red light and a cop pulled up behind her, and she got nervous and just like ran the red light because she was parked or she was stopped. The cop came and then she ran. The cop just like pulled her over, like what?
Yeah,
Like I got scared.
exactly. So like people are going to make mistakes. People are going to make mistakes always.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think also your teacher doesn't need to be perfect. Your teacher just needs to be a little bit ahead of you for you to
Yeah.
get benefit. You know,
Right. Right.
again, we said it earlier, like Marina, I'm perfectly fine with her making content because if she's able to get people to speak English like her, then these people are going to speak C2 level English and be able to work and things like that. You know, which
Absolutely.
for most people that's a pretty good achievement. You know,
And, and another thing not to forget about is that, at least this is my belief, a teacher who can motivate a student is a better teacher than a teacher who can teach the rules. So your teacher, their main job should be to motivate you to continue learning, because most of the learning that's going to happen is not going to happen in the classroom while you're watching a video online or
facts.
face to face while you're speaking with someone. Most of it's going to happen later when you're doing your own work, when you're reviewing, when you're thinking. And so, like, if I have a teacher who can motivate people versus a teacher who just knows the rules and can't motivate people, I'm going to take the teacher who can motivate them, because they're going to actually get better results. And that's why Marina's doing a great job. All the YouTube teachers, they're motivating people. And I see some comments on these, competitive videos that we've been making that say like that they're a little less motivated, that they don't like this thing. Right. And that is a point to
That's
bring up. But if we look at the overall, like the big picture, what percentage of people are saying that, thinking that, feeling that, commenting that, and like, are we going to let YouTube comments rule the world? That's a bad idea, right? So
I do want to pick. I know we're getting very extended, so maybe Chris, if I can get like another
yeah,
5 minutes
no
of your time,
problem.
cool.
No problem. I got time.
Um, I want to bring up that point that you just mentioned because I think this is probably the most, in my opinion, the most damaging aspect of what's happening with the situation is that I have students that, for a lot of my students, I like what you said about classes and like, because what I tell students all the time is like the class time in a lot of ways is the least valuable time. It's what you do after it. You get the class, you get the information, then it's like, okay, now you need to start doing the thing, you know?
Yep.
I tell students that all the time. And one of the things that I often tell students to do too is like, hey, make record yourself, make some videos of yourself. You don't have to put them, like, if you can put them on YouTube, but like keep them private. It could just be for you, or like start like your own little podcast thing, like just for you. You know, like, no one has to watch this stuff. But then as you get more comfortable, you can put it out in public. But I have had, and I'm sure you may have experiences with your students as well. I have some students that are like, yo, I was thinking about doing this, but nah, man, I'm not doing that because I don't want to get attacked. I'm going to put
Mhm.
stuff out there in English and people are just going to criticize. Because, like, I think the view is like, oh my gosh, like Marina speaks, all these teachers speaking at a really high level and they're getting attacked. So what about me? You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that to me is probably the most damaging aspect of the situation because I want this to be a space where you're learning another language. I mean, what a beautiful thing to do, with your time and your life. I think that's a great thing. So that's the part that I think kind of frustrates me the most about the situation is people are feeling discouraged instead of feeling empowered.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, it's tough. I think that existed even before this,
For
that
sure.
people are nervous to put
For sure.
themselves out there.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I don't think that, what's I'm
Oh,
trying to catch all the
yes, yes, yes,
comments.
sir.
Yeah. Even when you're a teacher, you believe you know everything. Yeah, there's always something
Mhm,
new.
mhm,
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that people already were nervous about putting themselves out there. Maybe this, intensifies those emotions
mhm,
by seeing people being attacked, and then
mhm,
there's actually a real threat, right?
mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm,
but I like as I understand what you're saying, but like
mhm,
let's take both. I feel like we were taking opposite sides on two topics, but they both follow the same logic, so they should
mhm,
be aligned. So, like, should people uh, like we agree that everyone will make mistakes, right?
yep,
So no one will ever not make mistakes. That's an ideal, but the reality is that people make mistakes. So in this case, I feel like it's the same. That the ideal is that this is a safe space, no one's going to get attacked, everyone's fine, everyone's
mhm,
just swimming along doing their thing. But the reality is you need to have your armor on. You have to have your shield up. And so put the armor on, put the shield up and go at it. And like if you're not ready to go into battle then don't. But like it would be great that if you don't have to. It would be great if you don't have
mhm,
to, right? It would be great if
mhm,
there were just world peace.
mhm,
But that's the ideal.
mhm,
You have the reality. And I think it's also true that sometimes the war has to be fought to get back to peace.
mhm,
So it's I'm not trying like I don't want to justify anything that in the future I might come back and say I was wrong for doing that, right?
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
completely open to someone showing me that I have made a mistake. I feel like that's the epitome of maturity is being able to admit your own mistakes
mhm,
and to apologize or to take action
mhm,
to rectify
mhm.
them,
Yeah.
right? So, um, so yeah, that's kind of how I feel in this space is that it's completely possible that I am wrong, but I feel like there's ideals and there's realities,
Mhm,
and we can strive for ideals, but we have to operate within the realities.
mhm. I don't disagree with anything you said. Like, I think, anytime you step out of the door, you are subjecting yourself to the world, you know?
And not even out the door. Now you
Like,
can just turn on your
back, yeah.
camera,
Yep, yep. Yeah, I mean, I have a 4-year-old. I get attacked. It's okay, you know, living in my house.
right?
Um, 'cause they can be sassy. Um, but, it's on the one hand, I get it, and you gotta be if you're serious about the goal, this is certainly not gonna stop you.
Right.
But it's also, I mean, even in business is always talking about friction. How do you remove friction? And unfortunately, this is one aspect of friction that is going to. I mean, we can even see it, for instance, some of the comments here.
Mhm,
Um, this is going to cause people to not do it, and that's a shame. But
mhm,
it's also the reality. And on the one hand, for myself, like I'm okay with, occasionally I'll make videos in Italian and stuff like that, and I'm open to it. But I understand that that's not the reality for everybody. So
absolutely.
yeah.
But also, we wanna avoid the situation where, in the news here in the States, they were just talking yesterday, today about this shooting at the mall in Texas,
Hmm.
right? A person went to the mall, they got shot. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I'm not gonna go to the mall anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, you put a video out, somebody attacked somebody else, like, you're not gonna put videos out because somebody
Hmm.
else is doing something that you don't
Yeah.
like? I mean,
Hmm.
if you go through life with that mentality, I think that like, I think that the person who believes that has to work on their own perception of
Hmm.
this, situation and how it
Hmm.
affects them because they're allowing it to influence their behavior too much,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so, like, I think that that's kind of a big summary of, like, what we did today, what we talked about
Mhm.
today is that it's this internalizing of
This guy's a true perfect.
it, it's kind of an internalization of the situation how people are saying that it makes them feel
Yeah.
online, what people might be doing or might not be doing because of that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, each person is going to make their own decision. Um, so that's why I feel like at the beginning of this chat, I mentioned that I'd like to kind of steer this into the direction of continue with error correction, but not have to focus on them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
Mm-hmm.
find other interesting, creative ways to present error correction to that audience that wants that error correction, but without the, you know, the competition. Like it's hard to remove the like antagonism, if we want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
from the competition,
Mm-hmm.
because in competition there is a level of antagonism towards the other team, the other player.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be a challenge to find ways to be competitive without having a competitor directly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But just because it's difficult to do that doesn't mean that we stop and be like, it's too hard, so I'm just gonna do this. Like I think you mentioned, trying to be creative, trying to find new approaches and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I'm nervous about moving forward is that are is there going to be enough motivation on the part of all parties to look for that innovation, or are we just going to be like, hey, tried and true, we're going to run this to the ground? You know what I mean? um I'm skeptical, but I mean, maybe I'm okay with being wrong. We'll see we'll see what happens.
I mean, I'm not promising that there's not any more videos already in the pipeline. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Keep an eye out for Chris's channel.
I've got like Final Cut projects full of like 15 different things that are just sitting there waiting, and like it's just
Push
like
the button, Chris. Push the button.
right. Sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, uh, what's going on today? There's this thing's just okay, let's fire one off.
I
Why not?
choose violence.
It's not. I don't see it that way.
No, I'm just.
I don't see it that way. I see it as competition and decent competition. And I'm really excited. Like I said, I think that in the near future, there'll be more competitors.
100%. People
Somebody
see how
else is
things
going to
work
step
out.
into the ring, and
100%.
you know, and I think that's what it is. Like that's what it is. There are people who don't go to the arena, and there are people who do. And the people who go to the arena want to see the fight. And that's
Yep.
it. If you don't want to see the fight, don't go to the arena, right?
Yep. Yep.
And uh the arena is pretty clearly marked on all of the channels, I think. It has the other person's face on it.
Facts.
So like
Facts.
you see a video that doesn't have their face, not about them.
Yep.
You see a video.
Yeah.
So
Chris, this has already gone way longer than I expected, which is great. For those of you who sent comments or questions and things like that we did not get to, my apologies. We'll definitely be addressing them in the future. But Chris, just really quick, can you just let people know again about what you do, where people can find you in case they don't know who you are?
yeah, absolutely. So we've been teaching English, let's see, since 2008. We have an online school where we have speaking practice 5 times every day. You can join all of the lessons, unlimited speaking practice. Go to chrisamericos.com. And if you would like to get in touch with me personally, we also help online businesses grow their revenue, their teams, their systems. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can go to lifeafteramillion.com.
Cool. Chris, thanks so much for being part of me, man. I appreciate you having here on the channel.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
everyone
me.
for
Thanks for
watching.
your time.
Right, guys, you guys take care. Have a good day, good night, good afternoon.